Welcome back, viewers. In this video we're going to be working on a 2009 Outback 2.5i that has a little bit of a rear suspension issue. We got some blown struts. Alright, first things first, we want to get the car off the ground, well, the back axle that is, either with a lift as I have here or with a jack and securing it on jack stands before we begin work. Don't want to get it too high because we do have to get into the back of the car to access the top of the struts, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so into the back of the car real quick, we need to move some interior pieces to access the tops of the struts. We're going to remove the cargo cover. The all-weather floor mat. I'm going to go ahead and fold the rear seats. I'm going to pull our storage cover. Pull the spare tire cover. We can flip back this piece here, and now we have access to the top nuts for either of our struts. All right, now we can remove the rear wheels. All right, now that we've got the wheel off and the car is up in the air, we can remove the 19mm bolt from the bottom of the shock absorber and remove the strut assembly. This bottom bolt is under some tension, so it's advised to put and support the bottom of the strut here with a jack or jack stand, and before you drive out this bolt, because it will drop down some once this bolt is knocked out of here. Now that the bottom bolt and nut are out, we can go inside the car and remove the 14mm nuts that secure the top of the strut to the body of the car. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way, we can access the top 2 nuts for each strut. They are 14 millimeter. Ratchet wrench would probably be the best route here. And simply repeat this on the opposite side of the vehicle. Be sure to support the strut from underneath when removing the 12 millimeter nuts up top, and then slowly drop your strut down through the bottom. All right, now we've got our struts out of the car. We will need to disassemble them and replace the shocks. We'll be using a spring compressor to compress our spring to allow us to safely remove the top nut off of the strut mount, remove the spring, remove this bellow here, and put it all on the new shock. This is the driver's side. Looks to be in fairly decent condition, although I believe it is the OE factory shock strut. I don't believe it was ever replaced. This car has, I believe, 130,000 miles on an 09, which is a little excessive for factory struts. Shouldn't go that long before replacing them. And here we see the problem child dripping on the floor. This is the passenger rear strut that has completely busted, and you can see all of that hydraulic fluid has leaked out. It's all down the body of the strut. The sticker is actually peeled off the strut because of it, and it's actually all along the suspension and blown back under the car. That's why the back end of this car was so bouncy, and it gives a very bad ride and bad handling. Anytime you hit a bump, the back end would jump around and kind of fishtail with you, and wasn't very confidence inspiring to drive. So let's go ahead and get these struts torn down and replace these shocks. All right, so we'll take our spring compressor, slide it over our spring, try to get the furthest up and furthest down coil that you can grab. That way you have plenty of room to compress. I'll start this one on this side, then move around and put the other one on the back. always be careful with these things. They don't joke around and call them Widowmakers in shops for no reason. They are fairly dangerous, especially if one of these decides to pop off with all that spring pressure. Could seriously injure or kill you. Right, so hammer out of the way. So now that our spring is visibly loose on the strut, we can now safely remove this top nut. Our top nut here is a 17 millimeter. We can go ahead and remove that now. A lot of times you'll run into that problem I just had where you put the impact on it and the strut just free spins, especially on one like this that is busted. So at the top of the strut, there is a hex fitting in the middle. So what you need to do is get an offset box end wrench and a hex. Hold the inside of the strut still with the hex and loosen the nut with the offset box head wrench. You can get an offset box head wrench fairly cheap. Harbor Freight has a set, I believe, for like 15, 16 bucks metric sec, and I think it goes from 6 mil to 22 mil. So something cheap and disposable in Chinese that will at least get this job done for you. So there's a little suggestion for you. Okay, so the top of the strut here is a 6 millimeter hex, and like I said before, the nut is a 17 mil. So set up as you see here, we got this box end deep offset wrench in here, and then we can put our hex in the middle. We should be able, hopefully, to break this loose. All right, so just keep working around and you will have your top nut off once you get it broke loose. One little trick when you have the issue where it wants to spin like that, one way to get it to break loose is take the spring compressors off. That way the spring puts tension on that center strut, and hit it with an impact just to get it broke loose, and then it'll be much easier for you to get this top nut. So once top nut's off, we can remove the top hat of the strut, the spring, and the bellow. And then all we have is our busted old shop. And yeah, I shouldn't be able to compress this by hand. This thing is totally shot. But we already knew that from all the hydraulic fluid that's been leaking out of this busted strut. So headed for the junk pile. All right, so here is the new OE replacement. They are KYBs. It's an XLG. The part number is 341443. Much better. Can't compress by hand. Our new XLG ready to install. Even comes with a brand new top nut. Quick little side note before installing the new shock. In the Subaru factory service manual, there is a procedure listed for bleeding any trapped air out of the new strut. Says to vertically hold the strut, pull the top piston rod out as far as you can get it full extension. Once that's done, you'll flip the strut over, holding it vertically, put the piston rod down on the floor, and fully compress and rebound the strut 3 to 4 times. now the new shock is ready to go into the strut assembly. So all we have to do is basically reverse of what we just did. We will slide the old bellow, old spring, and old top hat over the strut. We will tighten and torque the top nut. Then we will remove the spring compressors, and we will have an assembled strut ready to go back on the car. We'll just do this whole process over again for the driver's side. Quick note, there is a little dip here in the spring perch. Make sure the end of the coil spring sits in this perch. There's also one at the top for the top hat. Go back to our box end wrench and hex. All right, got that tight, hand tight. We'll torque it once we get the spring compressors off. See what I mean about those things being dangerous? And there we go. We got our new fully assembled strut ready to go back on the car. Only thing we got to do first is properly torque this top nut. All right, now it's time to torque our top nut, which will be torqued to 55 Newton meters or 40 something foot-pounds. I'll have it on the screen. It's much easier to do when you have the strut and a vise. There we go. Top nut is properly torqued, so this strut is now ready to install back in the car. All right, now that we've got our assembled strut ready to go back into the car, we'll feed it through and back in. Support it from underneath as you start the two 14 millimeter nuts inside the car. Go ahead and start both nuts and tighten them hand tight. All right, now that you've got the upper nuts fairly tight and the strut is supported, what we're going to do is take the factory scissor jack that comes with the car for changing your flat tire, and we are going to position that jack between the control arm and body. Take the stock jack, place it between the control arm and the cradle. And we'll crank on this until our bolt holes align in the bottom of the strut and the spindle. All right, once you've got your bolt in, now you can take tension off of the jack and remove it from the suspension. Now that that's removed, you can add your nut. And now we'll torque our nut to specification, which in this case is 160 Newton meters. Now we can go inside and apply the final torque to the upper strut nuts. Now with the torque wrench, we can apply final torque to the upper strut mount nuts. They are torqued to 30 Newton meters. All right, now that our struts are all torqued, we can reinstall the interior of the car, put our wheels on, and torque the lug nuts to spec. Now we torque all our lug nuts to 110 Newton meters. And there you have it. Our new struts are on and ready to go. One more check real quick before we finish out the video. Let's do another rear suspension shake test. Got a little bit of squeaking going on, probably some suspension bushings, maybe sway bar end link, something like that, squeaking under there. It will take a little while driving for the new struts to settle, but other than that, huge improvement over those old busted struts that were on here. That said, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.